my name's Amy and welcome to the start of another weekly writing vlog. I haven't actually been vlogging a lot recently, so I am feeling a bit scattered today. We'll see how this goes. It is currently the last week of August. The weather is currently absolutely beautiful, but there is a hint of autumn in the air. The leaves are just starting to turn, there are lots of berries around, and the days are getting shorter. This is the time of year when our work season begins to wind down. We've had an incredibly busy summer running our holiday let, but as we get into September, things do slow down a little bit. And this is always the time of year when I find myself recommitting to writing. I look at what I've done so far in the course of the year, and I realise that the end of the year is creeping up on me. Now is the time when I start thinking about everything I want to get wrapped up. So for this week, I've decided to make a couple of changes to my writing schedule. Throughout the summer, I've been focusing fairly equally on editing and drafting. I don't necessarily regret that, but it does mean that my editing is way behind where I want to be right now. I'm currently editing a book called Echo State, which is the second in a trilogy. It really should have been released by now, and I am just about halfway through the edits. It's been quite nice to make slow and steady progress on it, but I've reached the point where I just want it to be done. I want it finished, I want it released, I want to be able to move on to the final book in the trilogy. And the other thing spurring me on right now is that NaNoWriMo is just around the corner. Now I know it's actually a few months off, but in writing terms and how long it takes to finish every project, that is very close. I would really like Echo State finished before November because I do have plenty more drafting work to do at the end of the year, and it would be really fun to do some of that in NaNoWriMo. So I kind of have a deadline of the end of October to get this book released, and given the pace I'm working at the moment, that's pretty tight. So one of my big priorities this week is to make as much editing progress as possible and try to build up some momentum to carry me through the next couple of months. And as for drafting, I'm actually taking things very easy. I'm about halfway through the draft of a high fantasy book. That's the second in a series with no release titles yet. I'm trying to get 2 or 3 finished before I release any of them next year. So I definitely could make some more progress on that, but I'm not going to set myself any goals this week. I've also got yet another urban fantasy that I am planning. I have talked about an urban fantasy world in previous vlogs. It has now had probably a dozen different books in various versions of this world. Each one kind of builds on the last with slightly different version of the world, with different characters, with different plots. I started one of these iterations in a vlog a few months ago. There has been another one since, I think, and now we're on to a third in as many months. I might talk about this process more later in the vlog. It is kind of painful at this point how many times I have started different urban fantasy novels in this world, and something always goes wrong, or I lose interest, or I even get to the end of the draft and then decide to scrap it. So I've got yet another of those in the planning phases at the moment, and that's the other thing I might be working on this week. But the whole point of writing for me this week is going to be to try and rekindle some joy in the writing process. It has been really hard to keep writing and keep enjoying it over the course of this very busy summer. Now that things are winding down a bit, I want to remember why I'm doing this. I'm cutting back on the goals for my drafting, I'm focusing on editing and getting one book finished, and I'm just going to see where inspiration takes me. Between that and enjoying this last week of summer, possibly the last nice weather we'll have all year, I think it's going to be a really good week. morning. It is Friday. I'm just sitting down with a cup of coffee. I'm trying to get used to some new glasses, which is really uncomfortable. I hate getting new glasses. But apart from that, it has been a pretty relaxing week. We have done lots of walking this week, which was tiring but not stressful. So that was a nice way to spend some really sunny days. You will be seeing some of that footage soon, or you will have already seen it. I'm not sure what order this footage is going to show up in. So now we're probably going to have a few days at home, so let's chat about the writing and where I've got to. This week's focus has very much been editing and working on Echo State, and it is going really well. It's been a while since I've just focused on one project like this. I've done absolutely no drafting at all, a little bit of outlining for the urban fantasy, but really it has just all been about editing this week. And I'm really enjoying it. I do like having more than one project on the go. I like editing and drafting within a single week. But I'd really felt that progress on Echo State had stalled, so it's been really good to spend a big chunk of time just working on this one thing and feel like I'm getting somewhere with it. Although I will say that it's still pretty slow going. Things seem to have constantly thwarted me on trying to get this book done quicker. It was supposed to have been published a couple of months ago, and I am nowhere near that stage yet. First of all, life was just really busy. I was starting the edits in the middle of summer, and that was just really hectic. Work was busy. I often wasn't at home that much, and when I was at home, I didn't have the time or energy to really put into editing. But now that life is slowing down, it is the book itself that is getting in my way. I did not outline this book. I'm using outlines a lot more at the moment. The books I've been drafting over the last 6 months or so have been much more heavily outlined. But I did not outline Echo State in advance, and I can really tell. The structure and the plot are not too bad. I'm not having to move too much around. I've cut a little bit out of the middle, which I thought waffled on a bit too long. But overall, the structure and arc of the book is pretty solid. But I'm running into the same problem that I always run into, that character motivations and plot details and world building details are inconsistent. This sounds like a very small thing, and in the grand scheme of editing a book, it is small, but it takes an inordinate amount of time to edit and fix. Things like who knows what in each particular chapter, where characters are at different times of day, what people are doing in the background, off stage. And particularly in this cyberpunk book, details of how the technology works. All of these are relatively minor taken on their own, but every single change causes a ripple effect throughout the book. Sometimes I have to go back and add details in earlier to do a bit of foreshadowing and lay the groundwork. Sometimes it's a case of making sure that the little tweak I've made doesn't affect things further through the story later on. But a big part of it is just inconsistencies and making sure I'm not tripping myself up repeatedly. And this is taking a lot of time. I am trying not to let myself get frustrated with it. I'm trying to forget the fact that I really wanted this to have been published by now. I'm focusing on the day-by-day work and just doing one scene at a time, cleaning things up as best I can. And there's definitely satisfaction to be found in working at this slow and steady pace. So that's really all I can focus on right now. It's now Sunday evening and this hasn't at all been the weekend I expected. Instead of it being a quiet couple of days at home, I've actually been really busy. Yesterday we ended up going on an impromptu family walk and then a meal out. It was a beautiful day and it was really nice to take advantage of that. But because of that, because I was out in the sun a lot and because I'm also still getting used to these new glasses, I ended up spending the evening with a migraine, which means that today, Sunday, has been a bit of a recovery day. I did do some writing this morning. I wrote about 1,500 words in the end, which is more than I'd usually do in one sitting. That was for my serial fiction for Chronicles of Tyria. That was an entire chapter written this morning. That usually takes me 2 or 3 days, but the words were just really flowing this morning. I won't say they're good words. I felt as I was writing them that they were going to need quite a lot of editing, but they were coming along very quickly, so I just kept going until they were done. But other than that, I've really just been lounging around and reading a book. I've just finished 8 Detectives by Alex Pavesi. I'm not a huge reader of mysteries and crime fiction, but this one was pretty good. And I read the entire second half of it this afternoon. This has been a reasonably productive weekend. And apart from the headache, it's been a pretty enjoyable one, but I maybe haven't done as much writing as I would have liked. Because of the way this weekend went, though, I kind of find myself wanting to talk a little bit about productivity and health. Now, this isn't something I like to dwell on. I don't really talk about health stuff much online at all. But just by coincidence, over the last week or so, I've seen a lot of the same things, which is people being wildly productive. Finance gurus who talk about the 6 hours you have between getting home from work and going to bed, and how you can use all of that time for a side hustle. And also authors who work a full-time day job and then get home and do their writing at night and on the weekends, and again are putting in very long hours. And I have to admit, a part of me sees people being really productive like this and feels jealous. Those very productive lifestyles are only possible if you don't have any health conditions. You cannot work 16 hours a day if you're constantly in pain. You can't rush off to the gym at 9 p.m. and then come back and do more writing if you're crawling into bed at 8 every evening. I see these very productive lifestyles and know that they are just so far outside my physical capabilities. Now, I'm very lucky. I've been able to build a business with the help of a very supportive partner and family. I don't particularly feel limited by the fact that I have chronic headaches or that I sleep for 9 to 10 hours a night. I have built my lifestyle around these things and around my various health complaints. And generally, apart from the simple question of, do I feel up to this today? I don't really think about it that much. But when I see people working very long hours and being so incredibly busy, I do feel a bit of frustration that I can't do the same. I do lose work time to feeling ill, to being in pain, and to needing to sleep more than the average person. And I suppose what it really comes down to is that, yes, I have learnt to live with the way my body functions, and I've made a very happy and productive lifestyle around that. But I also think it is okay to sometimes feel a bit frustrated when you see other people doing things that you can't. Acceptance is important, and knowing what your body can handle is important. And I certainly try not to be bitter about these things, but I also know there is no point comparing my productivity to people who are able to work another 8 hours a night when they get home from a day job. If you're finding yourself in the same position and you are getting frustrated by it, I think it's perfectly fine to feel that way, but know that you will find your own routine that works for you and your body. No matter what you see other people online accomplishing and how fast they're working, you do not have to live up to that. It's not a race and it's not a competition. That's just something that's been on my mind quite a lot this week. I'm going to count Monday as the last day of my week because I think I started this vlog on a Tuesday. I am hopeful that I will be doing better with the headache situation and the new glasses by tomorrow, and we'll see where my writing takes me then. It's now Monday afternoon and we have reached the point where it is time to wrap up this vlog. I've gone into this new week using the same tactic I used last week for scheduling my work. My big target this week is to keep editing Echo State. I've set myself a time target for the week as I did last week. I just about hit it last week, so hopefully I'll be able to do the same again this week. And I have made absolutely no plans for drafting. Within the next few months, there are projects I'm going to have to come back to and finish. But right now, in the drafting world, there is nothing particularly pressing. I can just work on whatever I want. Throughout most of last week, I was focusing on the urban fantasy. I did a decent amount of outlining and I wrote the first chapter. It's hard for me to tell how that story is going to go. As I said earlier, there have been so many versions of this book set in this world with different characters. This is just another in a very, very long list, and I don't honestly know if it's better than any of the ones that have come before. It does have multiple points of view, which is perhaps not typical in urban fantasy, but feels a little bit more comfortable to me. It's giving me a bit more space to expand the world and make it a bit more atmospheric. I think the first chapter I've written will need paring back a bit. It's only about 1,500 words now, but it's almost like a prologue, and I think I need to cut it down a bit. But I'm not going to worry about that right now. It's written, I'm reasonably happy with it and what it sets up for the rest of the book, but I'm not actually going to carry on with that book this week. If you've seen any of my Write a Novel With Me videos, you'll know that I'm always working on some big epic fantasy books in the background. The one that is covered in those videos is called Mythic War. I haven't touched it for a while. I did quite a bit of work on it last winter. I was drafting it as part of my NaNoWriMo projects, and it's currently about a quarter of the way done. I don't know if it's just the time of year, we're getting into autumn again, but I very much feel like working on it again, so I'm going to dust that off this week. I looked through my notes this morning and I do have an outline for what comes next. I did stop writing halfway through a scene, so it's going to be a little bit tricky to pick that up again, but I think I can manage. I have had so many different sessions of working on this book and then putting it aside and then coming back to it, so I'm kind of used to it by now. And I do work this way on a lot of different projects. It's quite common for me to write the first third or half of a first draft, put it aside and come back to it a couple of months later. So I'm used to this. I'm ready to tackle it again, And I'm really glad that I didn't schedule any particular drafting projects this week because I do have the freedom to work on it once my editing for the day is done. And one nice side effect of setting fewer goals for myself is I am actually reading more. I've been in a bit of a slump for the last month or so. I've started probably 5 books in August, and until the other day I hadn't finished any of them. So I've gone back to something that I actually started in about February of 2020, which tells you a lot about how the last couple of years of my reading have gone. But I've picked that up again and I'm enjoying it, and it's been nice to have a bit more reading time and to not constantly feel like I'm behind on my writing goals. So like I said, that's where I'm going to wrap things up. I'm back at work tomorrow. My schedule for the rest of this week is going to be a little bit more hectic. I honestly feel like I've had a bit of a holiday over the last 7 days. It's been great to get outside and enjoy the sunshine, get loads of writing done, but also try to keep things fairly relaxed. Cutting back on my goals and really only focusing on one major project has made a big difference to my levels of anxiety and how well I feel I'm managing my time. It was a bit of an experiment, honestly, because I've been working on 2 or even 3 projects a week for months now. But learning to simplify like this has been really valuable, and I'm definitely going to be taking this lesson forward into the weeks to come. I have got a busy writing season ahead of me, but I would like to come out the other side feeling refreshed and creative, not burnt out. So I hope your writing is going well, and I hope most of all that you are enjoying it, because that's something we've always got to remember in the midst of all the hustle and productivity. I'll be back soon with another vlog. In the meantime, keep writing everyone, and I'll see you next time.